Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6 or Group F. We'll explain our material today is about word Englishes, intercultural communication, and requisite competence. Before that, let me introduce our group. My name is Zahara Nelvia Salam, and member group is Intan Larasativa and Hanief Fadhilah. Okay, the first material will explain by me. Word Englishes. Word Englishes refers to the diverse varieties and form of English spoken around the world, reflecting the linguistic and cultural diversity of its speakers. These varieties may differ in pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse patterns, influenced by local languages, cultures, and historical contexts. Recognizing and studying word Englishes highlights the dynamic nature of English as a global language and the cultural riches embedded with its various forms. Next slide. Three usage of the term word Englishes. The first, it has been used to refer to all varieties of English across the globe. Encompassing all varieties, this is the broadest sense referring to the entire spectrum of English used globally. And the second, it is used to refer to new Englishes that have developed in the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia. Example, Kenyan English, Cameroon English, Singaporean English, and Malaysian English. Focusing on new Englishes, this usage highlights the unique varieties that have emerged in places with a history of English influence or colonization. And the third, it refers to word Englishes capitalized a parodic associate word Englishes as a parody. Here, word Englishes refers to a broader academic concept. Next slide. The three-circle model of word Englishes was developed by Kakru in 1985. The first, the inner circle Kakru's model refers to the traditional basis of English. And the second, the outer circle Kakru's model refers to consists of the earlier pieces of the spread of English in non-native settings. And the third, the expanding circle refers to the varieties where English is learned as a foreign language.
Okay, let me discuss about Kahru's three-circle model. First, inner circle. Inner circle models refers to the traditional basis of English dominated by the mother tongue varieties where English acts as a first language. Pace White, 1997. The countries involved in the inner circle include the USA, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The varieties of English used here are said to be norm-providing. Second one, the outer circle consists of the early phases of the spread of English in non-native settings, where the language has become part of a country's chief institutions and plays an important second language role in a multilingual setting. Most of the countries included in the outer circle. Then, in the outer circle are former colonies of the UK or the USA, such as Malaysia, Singapore, India, Ghana, Kenya, and others. The English used in the outer circle is considered as a norm developing. The expanding circle refers to the territories where English is learned as a foreign language. The territories do not have a history of colonizations by members of the inner circles and institutional or social role. English is taught as a foreign language as the most useful vehicle of international communication. The countries in the expanding circles include China, Japan, Greece, and Poland. The English used in the expanding circle is regarded as norm-dependent.
Bolton 2005 provide a summary of the studies that have in one way or another addressed the issues surrounding the notion of World English or related terms such as New Englishes. World Englishes, including English studies, social linguistics, applied linguistics, lexicography, and critical linguistics. Kahrufian paradigm. The paradigm as a whole has been concerned with the spread of English, the stratification of English, the context in which these are used, description of these, the politics and policies regarding the English language, the teaching and testing of English and fallacies about the users and use of English. Okay, the next slide will explain by Intan Larasativa.
Okay, before we jump to next topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Intan Larasativa with register number is 21040003. Okay, we're going to the next slide. One important aspect of research on intercultural communication is exploring the intricate relationship between language, thought, and culture, and the study of which dates back at least to the 19th century. They are Wilhelm von Humboldt, 1767 until 1835, and then Franz Boas, 1858 until 1942, and then Edward Sapir, 1884 until 1939, and the last one from Benjamin Ward, 1897 until 1941. They are prominent scholars who all emphasized the relationship between language, thought, and culture. So we jump to the first point, A. Humboldt. Humboldt viewed language as expressing the spirit of a nation. He argued that every language is entrenched in a particular worldview, and therefore diversity of language reflects diversity of thought patterns driven by different worldviews. After that, on point B, this view was later followed and extended by Sapir and Ward. Sapir and Ward believed that differences in the way language encodes cultural and cognitive categories affect the way people think, and this is known as the linguistic relativity hypothesis. In other words, they argue that linguistic categories influence the language user's perception of the world. This version of the hypothesis became known as the strong version. Next, as Martin, Nakayama, and Kerbaugh, 20 and 12, page 17, put it, the study of intercultural communication and applied linguistics developed in different ways at different times in various world regions, with scholars in each region following particular research trajectories, including accepted practices as well as disjunctures. They argue that even the works of scholars such as Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and Karl Marx could be viewed as instrumental to laying the foundation of research and thinking in the area of intercultural communication. This overview, therefore, isn't intended as a thorough historical review but as simply providing a brief backdrop to traditional research in the area of intercultural communication as a preamble for the current volume. During the 1980s and 1990s, a large number of studies began to appear that explore topics such as storytelling or narrative in different cultures, discourse structure across cultures, and cultural influence on thought patterns and language. In this slide, Klein, 1994 classifies that studies of intercultural communication in that period into three categories based on their approach adopted as follows. A. Contrastive approach. Studies that follow a contrastive approach compare discourse across culture, mainly between native speakers and non-native speakers. An example of this was the study of the speech act of apology across different languages and cultures. B. Interlanguage approach. The interlanguage approach examined the discourse of non-native speakers in their second language, often in comparison with their first language or with native speakers of the language. An example of this was the study of apology in second language by Venezuelan speakers in comparison with speakers of American English. C. Interactive intercultural approach. The interactive approach examines and compares the discourse of people of different cultural and linguistic backgrounds interacting either in lingua franca or in one of the interlocutor's languages. This approach was adopted, for example, in Klein's 1994 study of the use of English as a lingua franca by speakers from various linguistic and cultural backgrounds in the Australian workplace. It is to be noted here that some scholars have used the term cross-cultural communication for studies that fall under the category of A and have reserved the term intercultural communication for those that adopted the interactive intercultural approach. Okay, we jump to next slide. I see in context. At first point, fostering a constructionist perspective, angry and legal power in local languages and communication challenges in the non-multinational workplace. Investigate the context in which communication in multilingual workplaces takes place. By this statement, it is providing example from 12 multilingual companies. They examine employees' perceptions of the challenges that language choice and language use can create. Language choice in a multilingual or multicultural workplace could have great intercultural implications, where often a single language is regarded as the language of the workplace. The choice of one official workplace language would automatically advantage or disadvantage different members of that workplace based on their confidence and competency in that language. We turn to point B. Language of the workplace could work as a social capital, enabling the speaker to access various communication channels and form beneficial social groupings. By this statement, at the same time, individuals who lack the capital become isolated, which in turn can result in miscommunication or lack of communication between different language clusters within the same workplaces. Recognizing all these issues, Angry and Megable argue for the need for a more comprehensive intercultural training for multilingual or multicultural workplaces, which also addresses the issue of pragmatic fluency in language rather than mere language proficiency. While the latter is needed for managing the overall success of multilingual contexts, it is the former, they argue, that is required for the deeper layer of identity construction of individuals interacting with each other in such a context. For example, migrant studies, as we have already mentioned, is another field that highlights the inventability of intercultural communication. During the course of an intercultural encounter, more so than during communication between people from the same cultural background, there is a potential for miscommunication and misunderstanding. The potential often has direct correlations with the language proficiency of the interactants and the language in which they are communicating. One of the significant sources of miscommunication is the failure of the interlocutors to culturally contextualize the behavior and utterances of each other. Despite the existing body of literature on the general issues pertaining to intercultural communication, there is still need for more research on the topic when the intercultural communication and the resulting miscommunication have immediate social, physical, or health consequences for either party. One such case is the native speaker doctor and no-native speaker or migrant patient encounters where two layers of culture, medicine as a cultures and community as a culture, remove the interlocutors from each other's. This gap becomes quite critical, particularly if either party lacks intercultural awareness and functions on the pre-existing stereotypes they might have in their interlocutors. Miscommunication is likely to occur, which in turn leads to feelings of perceived discrimination and anxiety, particularly in the non-native speakers' patients.
Okay, the next material is how culture can affect communication and language. For example, like people from Nordic countries are often said to speak more directly than native English speakers who tend to use more polite language. Scandinavians in the UK have reported causing offense to English people by failing to say please and thank you enough. And the next material is requisite competencies. Requisite competencies refer to the essential skills, knowledge, and attitude needed to navigate intercultural communication successfully in globalized characterized by world English. These competencies include the first is language proficiency. Proficiency in English include understanding various English varieties and adapting language use to different culture contexts. And next, cultural awareness. Awareness of culture, norms, value, belief, and practice, as well as openness to diverse cultural perspective. And next, intercultural sensitivity. Sensitivity to cultural difference, empathy toward others, and respect for diverse cultural identities. And next, communication skills. Effective communication skills including active listening, clarity in expression, nonverbal communication awareness, and conflict resolution. And next, adaptability. Flexibility and adaptability in adjusting communication style, behavior, and expectation to fit different cultural contexts. And next, critical thinking. Critical thinking skill to analyze and evaluate cultural perspective, challenge stereotypes, and navigate complex intercultural encounters. And the last is global citizenship. A sense of global citizenship including a commitment to social justice, equity, and sustainable intercultural relationships. And the last material is interrelations. The first is the study and understanding of world Englishes in from intercultural communication, highlighting the linguistic and cultural diversity within the English-speaking world. And the second is intercultural communication in turn become essential for effectively interaction English-speaking world. Intercultural among speakers of diverse English varieties, facilitating mutual understanding and collaboration. And the third is requisite competencies providing the foundation for navigating intercultural communication in the text of world Englishes, enabling individuals to communicate effectively, respect culture difference, and build inclusive and harmonious relationship in our interconnected world.